In at number 10, we have the Crystal Wyvern. And why would you say that this is such a strong creature? Well, I wouldn't say this is going to be the creature which is going to be like the most buff creature out there, but considering how easy this thing is to get, its strength is absolutely insane. So in terms of taming method to strength ratio, it has to be on this list. And yes, it is still a wyvern, so it is still going to pack a huge punch, and considering its tame method being one of the easiest in the game, it really does have to be put on this list, and no other creature can really fit the number 10 spot in my opinion. This just has everything which you could really need out of a wyvern, and especially with the blood crystal wyvern, you have yourself an even better version of the original creature which we all know and love. And this really is a creature which should be hugely celebrated across every Ark player's journey. And I really do think that everyone should tame one of these things at some point, as long as you do have Crystal Isles. And that shouldn't be too much of a stretch considering it is a free DLC map. And these things are just so good and so easy to tame with that passive taming method that they really cannot be discounted on this list. Again, because of their taming method being so easy. Even like a raptor tame is harder than this, and look at how much stronger this thing is than the raptor. Next up, we have the rock drake, and this creature really does pack a punch when it comes to all of that damage. This is an insane creature when it comes to any kind of damage. It really does pack a punch in the mobility department, of course, but also in the damage department as well. And considering its mobility, it really is something special which you can't celebrate with every Ark creature out there, as there are loads of really great strong tames that don't have great mobility, and that really should be counted. Obviously, in this list, they aren't going to be fully counted, as some of the creatures further along do not have great mobility, but they are definitely a lot stronger than that creature in terms of damage, apart from the creature in the number 1 slot, which you may think is a bit of a surprise, but I really think, considering all of its abilities, it is 100% worthy of that spot, and no other creature is as strong in it in those scenarios, those certain scenarios, of course, which are actually a very fundamental part of the Ark game. But back to the rock drake, this thing also has a very nice and interesting taming method, albeit not the easiest, but I do like a good challenge when it comes to taming any kind of creature, as I feel a huge sense of achievement once I've tamed it. I don't just want the easiest tames. The Crystal Wyvern is obviously an exception. That thing is just absolute gold, and it really does seem like an absolute cheat to have one of those things, considering how easy they are to tame, and you know how powerful they actually are. But yes, the rock drake is a bit of a difficult tame, but once you've got one of these things, especially on Arboration, you're really not going to regret taming one. Next up, we have the Basilisk, and this really does have to be included on the list, and although its taming method is rubbish, and I really don't like this thing as a creature, and especially its taming method, that is the main rationale behind it, it is definitely still a very strong creature which is capable of huge amounts of damage. And if you do have the patience to tame one and the resources to gather it, which is rock drake eggs, wyvern eggs work as well, and you can use magmasaur eggs too. You'll probably be using rock drake eggs, considering most people tame this thing on Arboration. Then you're definitely going to enjoy this creature, as it has a wealth of abilities, like going into the ground, dealing torpor with its second ability, but also just dealing loads and loads of damage with its bite. And this creature really is built to pack a punch when it comes to the damage department, so it obviously very much makes sense why this creature is on the list. In at number 7, we have the Thyla, and this creature is one of those creatures which you have to put on any strongest tames list. It really can't be discounted from this role. It has such a wealth of abilities, it is absolutely insane. Namely that this thing can climb trees, walls and vertical surfaces, all of that kind of jazz, you know. And also on top of that, which is a little bit sad in terms of ASA, it is actually really rubbish at traversing terrain now, because the terrain is so buggy. in its form that this thing just glitches everywhere. So maybe don't use this thing as much for all of that transport on ASA, as it really isn't doing too great at the moment, like some other creatures as well with that similar department. And we'll probably see that continuing on as other maps release and more creatures are added to the game, and then we'll see the true horror that is the ASA terrain system. But also, unlike many carnivores, this creature actually does have really great mobility and the bleed ability, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it, considering like it's literally ripping creatures apart with its teeth. But you know, this creature does deal the bleed ability, which is an insanely useful ability, which I personally think every carnivore should really have. But considering its use in Ark, it makes sense why everyone doesn't have it, because it is a very useful ability which only the most powerful of carnivores can really wield. And the creature in the number 1 spot has the bleed ability, of course, and you can't really put a creature which doesn't have the bleed ability in at the number 1 spot. But the Thyla is still definitely very deserving of the number 7 spot, because there are definitely some creatures out there, like the next one on the list, which are more powerful than it and do a better job than it. But it is still a really great tame of its day, considering how early this thing came out, and it still is a really great strong tame to this day, and again very deserving of this spot. Next up we have the Shadowmane, and this creature is one of those tames which I have to put on the list for strongest tames. Its amount of abilities is absolutely insane, and it is tremendous how many great abilities this creature has, and it really can't be discounted. Namely, it has really great mobility, although I shouldn't really talk about that considering it is a strongest tames list. But in terms of its damage, it does have that pack buff. I'm not sure if it has the bleed ability, but it can charge up its damage over time, which isn't actually a very long period. After it deals enough damage, it can charge up its attack and deal insane amounts of damage, and these are really great creatures to use for bosses. And if you wanted to, you could use them for the Moda. I've tried it once, it actually didn't go as bad as you may think, especially considering that hydration buff which they have. And they're really great swimmers as well, which definitely does play to their advantage in mobility. But in terms of damage, these things really do pack a punch and are great creatures for bosses if you just want to give them a shot. In at the number 5 spot, we have the Giga, and it really wouldn't be a strongest Ark Tames list without this creature being here. It is just one of those tames which has to be put on this list for obvious reasons. It is a big, hunking carnivore capable of so much stuff, and especially in the damage department. This is one of the highest damage dealing dinos in the game. Its base damage once tamed is absolutely insane, and when wild is even more insane, because these things do significantly debuff when tamed, which doesn't really make sense, but considering the time when it came out, it kind of had to be done, as then it would have been way too OP for this job. And now there are some other creatures which are definitely more powerful than it. That's why it's only in at the number 5 spot. But still, considering when it came out in its day, it is still really held up to the test of time. And it is a great creature for dealing insane amounts of damage. And it really does pack a punch. Its only real downsides being its rubbish stamina, and also its, not bleed ability, rage meter, which means it only really has a set amount of health, and leveling up its health isn't really going to do much, apart from obviously the percentage difference will change. Either way, its health is quite limited, as after a certain amount of health is gone, it will simply lose control. Next up, we have the Carcharodontosaurus, and this creature is pretty much the same thing as the Giga, although just with a few upgrades, and it is a newer creature. So what really do you expect from this thing? And it is definitely one of those creatures which I say has to be on the list of strongest Ark Tames, no matter who it's coming from, what type of player, or what creatures they use. Because I don't really use this creature that much, it is still a very strong Ark Tame, and obviously has to be on this list. Its main advantages over the Giga, and why it is higher than the Giga, is the fact that it doesn't have a rage meter, and its rage meter, not rage meter, I'm getting caught up on everything. It's like, oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's Blood Rage. Sorry, I'm getting caught up on all kinds of Ark abilities. Once that is full, it deals more damage than the Giga, and considering it's in combat for a lot of the time, that meter, I don't know why I was going to say beta there, is going to be really, really full most of the time when you're in heated combat. So you're going to be dealing insane amounts of damage, and with no rage meter, you have the whole spectrum of health the Carcharodontosaurus has. It's a really tough dinosaur name to say. And also, on top of that as well, it does have great mobility, which I haven't really talked about. And I'm pretty sure it does attack a little bit faster than the Giga as well, allowing a little bit more DPS, as we could all do with just a little bit more of that. In at number 3, we have the Rhinognatha. And this creature really is one to be highly respected by any Ark player, with no exceptions. And yes, this is one of the newer tames that has been added to Ark. The fact that it can pick up a Rex, which no other Ark creature can do, is an insane thing to have. And yes, cryopods exist, so you can quite easily transport creatures larger than a Rex. It still does really stand a point. And in terms of PvP at the moment, these things are being heavily used. And it was actually a very controversial position for Wildcard to put these things into ASA from day one, especially considering they increased the spawn rate by a lot. And the reason for that is these creatures are so strong, and people just wanted a more kind of primitive version of Ark, which we kind of all do want to go back to someday, and we hope Ark 2 is that, but I'm not actually sure it will be, because it may just end up like the first one. And I know Wildcard says no, that is not going to happen, but we don't actually really know, and Wildcard is in a little bit of a weird state at the moment, considering snail game stuff. It's not in a great position. But if you do want to know to tame one of these things, get a pheromone gland from the male, tame yourself a Bronto. Bronto is definitely preferred. Get those resources, which were on screen. Then find yourself a female Rhinognatha, trap it in some way. The net gun is preferred. Get out your spyglass, or you can obviously use a magnifying glass. Damage this creature as much as you can, and you may think you're taking it too far. Just do it as much as you can. Obviously, don't kill it. That would be a huge waste, but still, really get its health down while it's in that trap. And if you're a net gun, obviously you're time limited, but you still got a whole minute to do it, so it really isn't that bad. And after that, you want to feed your pheromone gland to your creature, obviously before you've let the creature out of the trap, otherwise this stage may not work. Actually, it just won't really. It won't do the thing it's supposed to. Then after that, this thing will come out of its trap and then impregnate your dino, where all of the hunger timers or craving timers, that's I think what they're called, will happen, where you'll need all those resources, only necessary to get 100% effectiveness. Then your dino will roll over, die, and you have yourself a baby Rhinognatha. In at number 2 is the Reaper, and the Reaper really did. I don't know what I'm turning into. Do you know what milk duds are? Maybe I'm turning into one of those things. Either way, if you didn't know already, the Reaper is one of the most powerful and strong tames which you'll find in any Ark playthrough, and the tame method is pretty similar to the Rhinognatha, so I won't go through it. But instead of your dino being impregnated and hunger time is not existing on this thing, you'll need XP to get 100% effectiveness. Yeah, there's no difference in the taming method at all, really. There just isn't one. They're pretty much just a rehashing, although obviously this creature did come first all the way back in 2017, so I guess it is 6 years older than the Rhinognatha, and I do realise it's been absolutely ages since Operation came out. I remember when that map was new. Either way, in terms of this thing's abilities, it doesn't really have an ability apart from its insane damage, and I think its second attack deals torpor. It's also really great mobility and just overall great ergonomics as a creature, and Wildcard really couldn't have designed this creature any better. It is just so good at its job in every way. If it was allowed into boss arenas, then bosses would be some of the easiest creatures in the game, so it really does deserve to be in this spot. And in at number 1 is the Deinonychus. And what really did you expect? Actually, you may have expected a very different creature to be in this list, but I think I have a very valid reason to put this thing in. Firstly, its taming method being one of the easiest in the game makes this one of the best creatures, if not the best creature, for strength to taming method difficulty ratio, whereas the Reaper is a very, very long and somewhat annoying process. Unless you're on Gen 2, then it is dead easy. And also the fact that this thing has a wealth of great abilities, namely its bleed ability, and the fact that it can inflict that on bosses as it is allowed into boss arenas, and it can inflict that bleed damage is insane, especially paired with its pack buff as well. You can have a group of these things going ham on any boss, and no creature will do better at that job. These are the best for it, unless you're on Extinction, obviously. Then some other creatures are going to be in order. The Carcharodontosaurus and the Giga are definitely going to be needed for that, as albeit they are really, really powerful tames. The health can't quite rack up to some of the Titans, but there isn't going to be the bosses which you're facing in most cases. And for everything else, these things are going to do splendidly for everything, and the mobility is really great as well. So if you do get into any trouble in a fight, you can quickly dash away with nice parkour skills, which, you know, isn't quite as elegant as some other Ark creatures, but still extremely useful. So I do urge you, if you get the chance, really, really do tame one of these things. And in my opinion, they're the strongest Ark creatures. In at number 10, we have the Rock Drake. And what makes this creature particularly festive, and I'm not just going to go for Christmassy tames, the Megalosaurus is not on this list, if you didn't know already, because, you know, I don't really like that creature, and nearing the festive season, you do want to treat yourself a bit. So some of these creatures are just like treat creatures, and this is one of them. And the reason why it is only in at number 10 is just the fact that this thing only does spawn on Arboration, as far as I'm concerned. It used to spawn on the original version of Alguero, but since its release as an official, well, it's an unofficial map, but it's an official DLC, they were removed. Either way, they're only really useful on that map as well. And, you know, they're kind of only really just adequate for that map, and other maps they struggle with. But on Arboration, if you're an Arboration kind of guy, these things are going to be extremely useful, and they're going to be a treat, and you should really get one at some point. These creatures just pack a punch in the damage department, and they also really do pack a punch when it comes to, obviously, the mobility, the damage, everything really. I don't know why I'm repeating myself so much, but pretty much everything about this creature is perfect. If they could fly instead of glide, they'd be useful on like every map. But, you know, for cheesing Rockwell as well is another thing that you could mention, that these things are great to do with some Lazarus chowder. Yeah, these things are definitely a really treat creature, and, you know, if you decorate it up in some Christmas colours, it can be one of the most festive tames out there. Next up, we have the Maywing. And isn't there just something inherently festive about this creature in its looks? I guess just the platypus is the platypus, you know? It is literally a flying platypus, so you can't really discount that. And just its character, and also its insanely great use. Again, this is a little bit of a treat creature, but one which I think every Ark player can cash in on, as long as you have the right maps to get these things to spawn on, as the Shadow was unlocked at level 19, and they're a really, really easy tame. And, you know, the fact that the Shadow was unlocked so early on is a huge, huge benefit. Like, these creatures are one of my favourite, if not my favourite, tame to use out there in the game at the moment for general travel. Again, yes, I am playing Extinction, so they're not going to be like the best on Extinction, but, you know, still, my point stands. These are really great travel mounts, and they're really great for breeding in the festive season as well. You know, breeding those mutated colors to get those festive colors out on official, or you could just paint your dinos. But, you know, getting those color mutations is very fun, and these things can help you with that, and they can gather berries too. There's just a lot to like about this creature. And again, I don't know what it is about the Shadowmane, but I kind of see something festive in this creature too, in a way. And again, it can be under another treat creature. Maybe I should make a video of like the 25 creatures for all the 25 days of the December calendar. Put that in the comments down below if you do want to see that. But in terms of this thing's festiveness, Yes, you're not going to say it's inherently Christmassy, but if you have one of these things around, it is definitely going to be a party for you. They are one of the best tames in the game. So full of any kind of abilities which you could be looking for. Unless it's just, I don't know. Actually, if you want a flying creature, maybe don't look here. Although, it does have some great mobility. It can just jump into the air like an absolute madman. But it also does have the pack buff, the hydration buff like the Spino. And it is a really great swimmer as well. Its only real downside being its taming method, which can be a drag at the best really. And it can be an absolute nightmare at the worst. Unless you've just got the luck of the gods and then you're just insane at taming these things with no problem at all. I'm not one of those people. Next up, we have the Basilisk, and the Basilisk has to be on this list. Actually, a lot of people at the moment are rewatching all of the Harry Potter films since Dumbledore died, and also, it's just an inherently Christmassy film, so I feel as if this creature fits in as in the second film, which I think is called The Chamber of Secrets. If I got that right, comment down below if I got that wrong. Yeah, there is a Basilisk at the end of it, so the Basilisk definitely does have that festive feel, and although you may not associate it with Christmas, you're going to see a lot of big monsters and basilisks and things like that around Christmas time, so it kind of does make sense. And again, it is a little bit of a treat creature, although its tame method is frankly awful, and you should never go for it. But if you stick a Christmas hat on this thing, it's going to look absolutely dashing, and you can have a lot of fun on the way too, which just, you know, it's an extra bonus really. Now this creature is probably one of the biggest treat creatures out there, and with such an easy taming method, I have to put it on, and it's like the glorified raptor, and there is so much fan art of these things with a Santa hat chucked on. You could just chuck one on these things. Christmas is already here. This is like one of the best presents that you could possibly get in Ark, if anyone was actually to give me a present in Ark. If they gave me a Deinonychus, I know that person is definitely a friend to keep, and for obvious reasons, namely their bleed ability, which can not only grip onto creatures and absolutely thrash them with no chance of you letting go, it also carries over to bosses as well, which is absolutely insane. And no other creature, as far as I'm concerned, does actually warrant this ability. And also on top of that, they do have the pack buff as well, which is nice. They also don't take full damage, which is a little bit of a godsend, so you don't have to keep dismounting every time you jump from a high height, because if you're someone like me and you travel around the Ark map a lot, that's going to happen a lot, and it just wastes loads of time and fun when traveling around. And, you know, the fact that they don't take full damage is just a nice little bonus, really, that I can take with me and be confident in myself that obviously I'm not going to die when I go out traveling, especially considering this creature deals a heck of a lot of damage, and if I'm taking one to bosses, it's a really fun time as well. And into ASA, when these things release in that as well, I'm sure they're going to be one of my favourites again too. In at number 5 is the Snow Owl, and you know, Christmas has a lot of snow around it, so it makes sense why I'd put this creature on the list. Also, it does have a very big relation with the creature, which is in the #1 spot. And also, if you can still remember what the thumbnail is, the creature in at #1 is also in the thumbnail of this video. If you want to go check, you can go check. It's that creature that's in at the #1 spot. Either way, back to the Snow Owl. This thing has a wealth of abilities, namely that glide ability, which is very significant with creatures like the Griffin, and now the Desmodus obviously has it too. But in terms of its PvP use, it has a very big advantage as well, with a sort of heat-seeking ability where you can seek out any organism that may be lurking out there. And essentially, it will shorten your color range to just being that purpley orange that you're seeing here, and then everything else will just be a black-y grey, and you get a little bit of a film grain effect on top of that too. Yeah, it is definitely a very useful ability, again, for PvP, if someone's trying to raid your base, or you're just trying to find a player that you need for any reason. It's great. It's also great on PvE if you're just trying to attack down a small dino. You also want to level up that stam, because their main ability is healing dinos, and they do this by just kind of curling their wings together and then freezing them, and then boom, they get healed. It's It's actually a really great ability, especially for wild tames. If you're taming them and their health is really low, you can heal those creatures right back up, and then that tame is going to be so much easier, and you're not going to run the risk of killing it or actually kill the tame. Also, if you're trying to tame a high level creature and it's getting absolutely battered by other creatures, you can use that as well and just keep freezing it every single time until its health is up to a reasonable level, and then help it with the assistance of killing all of the dinos in the area. And yes, it's not really going to rack up to something like the speed of the Managama, but the versatility of this creature is great. And again, if someone was to give me this as a Christmas present in the Ark game, I would be significantly grateful for this creature, and I really think it is a tame worth taming. Next up, we have the Crystal Wyvern. And, you know, I feel like if you got a Christmas tree and you got one of these and you put it on like miniature scale and it lit up, it would be just a really great Christmas tree decoration. It just seems like a very decorative and bright, colourful creature. It is literally just full of crystal. Like, it's a Crystal Wyvern. It's a really bright and colourful creature, especially the water one more than the blood one. You know, maybe the blood one kind of relates more to Halloweeny times, but there's just something festive about this way. What am I talking about? There's just something festive about this creature and the way it looks, and just the way, I don't know, it's wyverns in general. They are just quite festive tames, but especially with the looks, and again, just they would make really great Christmas decorations if wildcards sold those. So many of these things would be sold, and I swear, if you go on Etsy, you can probably find some Crystal Wyvern Christmas-like decoration Christmas tree thingamajigs. That's definitely what the listings are going to be called. And considering their very easy taming method and also very easy map to get because it's a free DLC map, it's great that you can have the Crystal Wyverns around and then use these things for that Christmas season, and they will definitely bode you well, as they are essentially just wyverns but really easy to tame. So nothing's bad about these things at all, and with their Christmassy colour scheme, you can't really go wrong with calling these things festive. Right, the Theri is in at number 3, and you might be a little bit confused what's festive about this creature, and honestly, I don't know, but just the character of this creature screams festive. When I was making this list, I always decide my top 3 first. I'm not going to spoil the top 2, but in at number 3, I wanted to put the Theri here, and it makes sense to me. You can always make the joke about its saddle being unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
Gets me every single time, and I enjoy it every time I edit that into any video. And then when I'm watching back the videos while responding to your comments and I just see that pop up, it just makes me smile, and I hope it makes you lot smile out there too. And it really does make my day every single time. That's why I put it in my videos a surprising amount. And actually, last time I put the Theri in the list, I said the joke and then forgot to edit it in. I guess I was just having a really tired day and I wasn't really caring in the editing process of the videos. But it would have definitely been in this one, because I'm going to do it just after I have done this voiceover. And they're also really useful tames on top of just being that festiveness, jokey, tickle chicken creature. They're great at gathering berries and fiber and wood and thatch. These things are absolute legends for all of that. And if you want to fight the dragon on the island, they're pretty much your best bet for creatures that actually natively spawn on the island, as they do a heck of a lot of damage for a herbivore, and no other herbivore can really rack up to that. Yeah, the Stego can, but it's really slow. In at number 2 is the Raptor, and you know why this thing has to be in at the number 2 spot. Raptor Claws is Raptor Claws, and Raptor Claws is the reason why the Ark Festive season exists. This is the rationale behind everything. The Raptor Claws is the beast. And besides that, there isn't really too much festive about the actual just Raptor itself. It's just Raptor Claws just makes sense, and the creature in at number 1 sounds very, very similar to Raptor. And again, it's the thumbnail of this video. I hope you can remember what that thumbnail was. It's actually probably ridiculously obvious. I don't know why I'm treating you all like babies at this point. Either way, the Raptor is a great tame, which actually, even in this season, although you can't really tame Raptor Claws, a raptor is a great tame for any Ark player. You can just tame anything on any map because they pretty much just spawn everywhere. Just unlike every map, they're just always there. Especially on Arboration, because I think those things can still jump on that map, and that scares me to this day. But yeah, raptors are everywhere, and they're really great tames. They're just great for dealing damage in the early game, and they really just kick you up off of your feet for the slow, really frankly difficult learning curve of Ark when you start, and then yeah, you're going to progress in the game so much faster with one of these creatures. And you know, what better gift in the festive season to have other than the beautiful raptor claws giving you presents every single night. So yeah, it kind of had to be in at the number 2 spot, didn't it? And in at number 1 is the gacha, because of gacha claws, which can be found on any Ark map in the festive season, and you'll just see them around, and you can trade stuff which you'll get from raptor claws to gacha claws, and you can get some special resources from it. And honestly, I can't remember what they are because it's been a while since the last Christmas event, and yeah, I have some very fond memories of gacha claws. And the gacha, I guess, is just a really festive creature as well. It is a creature of giving. It literally just gives resources out like that. Like, there's no issue with it at all. These things will just give you resources passively. When you give it snowball pellets, it's going to give you insane resources as well. And gacha claws is no different. It's going to give you a variety of resources. Obviously, you can't tame those things, but they really are the peak of the Ark festive season for me. And although raptor claws does run it, you're going to spend a lot more time in contact with gacha claws, so it makes sense why it's deserving of the number 1 spot. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this one, as I really did enjoy making it, and I can't wait for the festive season to truly be here. And as always, comment down below the most festive Ark tame, and I'll see you all later.